So hi and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today for the session about APR designation from the Canadian Public Relations Society. My name is Jill Craig and I'm the Accreditation Chair for CPRS Edmonton. I'm also a Senior Communications Consultant here at the City of Red Deer, and I obtained my APR in 2017. I'm also joined today by two guest speakers. We have Erin McFarlane, and she is the Senior Strategist of Communications at the City of Beaumont, and she obtained her APR in 2003. And we also have Jill Haynes, who's the Corporate Marketing and Customer Experience Supervisor at the City of Red Deer, my colleague. And she completed her APR in 2020 as well. So what we're going to cover off today, we just did some welcome and introductions, a little bit on the overview of what APR is. We're going to hear from Erin and Jill, and then a Q&A, and then at the end, we'll just do a quick wrap up. So the APR is a professional designation that recognizes your knowledge, experience, and commitment to the highest standards in public relations and communications management. It's designed for practitioners who have at least 5 years of experience and want to demonstrate strategic thinking, ethics, and leadership in the field. So essentially, there's three main parts to the APR. First, you'll go through a bit of an application and eligibility check to confirm your experience and readiness. And the deadline for this is actually coming up pretty quick. It's December 1st. But that's a pretty quick thing that you have to do. There's just an application that you have to submit to CPRS. Followed up, you'll do a resume and a work sample overview by December 30th. And after that, there's the readiness review where you present a work sample, and that's to reflect on your strategic approach to a project. And this is due on April 1st. So the work sample is a pretty substantial portion of the APR process. We're not going to dive too deep into the work sample. Both Erin and Jill will probably talk about their work samples a little bit as they go through their talk. And if you go on the CPR's website under the APR process, there's much more detail on what is included in your work sample, along with what qualifies as a work sample. But that's really where you have an opportunity to talk about a project that you've worked on that demonstrates the RACE formula and how you were responsible for delivering that project to demonstrate your experience in public relations. The third component is really that exam that comes into October, where you're going to have both a written and an oral exam spread usually over 2 days. Sometimes you'll have them both on the same day. The written exam is 3.5 hours, and then your oral exam is usually about 45 to 60 minutes, both to test your understanding of communications theory, research, planning, implementation, and evaluation. Those are sort of the three main components of the APR process. There's a lot of sort of smaller steps that go along with that, where there's some checkpoints, but those are the main steps that you'll go through in terms of the APR process. But you won't be doing this alone. There's a lot of support that is available through the APR process. The first is the cohort model. Jill and Erin and I were just talking about this. We did our APRs at different times, and the cohort model is something that's, I think, been around for about the last 5 years. So if you think that, there's CPRS chapters across the country, so you would have, colleagues doing this same process across the country. And so you have what is called this cohort model, where there is a national accreditation examiner that organizes sort of this group that works together, where they share resources. There's a series of webinars where this person's name is Alex, where he walks you through, sample exam questions, what to expect on the exams, how to work through your work sample. And then often this group will also sort of form organically and hold their own Zoom meetings to sort of study together and build that support system together as they move through that APR process. But then there's also a regional sort of local cohort model. That's where I come in as the accreditation chair for Edmonton. I organize and actually the participants organize it, but I support them through sort of a local study group. We just wrapped up with this year's cohort because they just wrote their exams here 2 weeks ago. And so for about I'd say 8 to 10 weeks leading up to the exam, we met weekly. We did practice exams. We did practice questions. We had guest speakers talking about their experience with the exam. They studied together. They shared reading lists together. So they really had support to lean on each other and go through that process together. They critiqued each other's work samples. And then I was also able to set up mock oral exams for them. Jill was actually a interviewer for me. So there's a lot of support available in that cohort model. The other piece is study guides and resources. So sort of connected to that cohort model, once you are in the program, there's usually a SharePoint setup where you will have access to past exams, past questions. I believe it's through Mount Royal, there's actually a library of your past work samples to really help guide you through that process. The next one is something that CPRS has just launched. There's a new program called Excelling at Race, a new training series to help professionals if they want to sort of walk through that race formula. You can take it on your own, separate from the APR process, but it's really meant to be sort of a companion to walking through that APR process, because the APR process is very much built on the race formula and the race process. Those are meant to go hand in hand together. So that is a new series that they're offering. If you go on the website, there's also some combined pricing models for doing your APR and taking the race training series at the same time. Really, the APR is meant to be a self-paced journey. While there are some milestones to meet in terms of the timelines, it is sort of a year-long journey, and you can take it at your own pace. You don't have to participate in the cohort model if you don't want to. There is a lot of readings that you need to do, but it is meant to be something that you can take at your own pace, work it into whatever you have going on in your professional life and your personal life, with some of those milestones that do need to be met. But right now, I'm going to turn it over to Erin to learn a little bit about her APR journey.
Thanks so much, Jill. My journey started, I guess probably started just a little bit after COVID hit. I kind of knew that I always wanted to do a professional designation of some sort. And my boss at the time had just completed hers a couple of years prior to that. And so when she joined, she was going through the process and she took it within her first year of being there. And it just kind of really interested me to see her go through that process and learn a little bit more and hear her talk about it. And then, we kind of were talking during a year-end review one year, and she just said, have you thought about doing your designation? And I was like, yeah, eventually. I don't think I have the experience or, the portfolio yet. And she was like, no, I think you do. And I think it should be something that you pursue. So I just kind of started asking her some questions, a little bit more about it, and kind of talking through with her, like what some of the pieces I'd worked on might be good for my work sample overview, and to put forward as my portfolio. And then from there, I attended a webinar just like this to learn a little bit more about it and learn more about the process. And then I decided, yeah, that did sound like something that I could do. So I studied throughout all of 2022 using the online cohort model, which I was very fortunate to be a part of. That was one of the great things that I thought came out of COVID, because I know my manager at the time had to do it on her own without that larger national cohort. And so I think she just had one other person to study with locally at the time. And I think it was a little bit time consuming in terms of having to meet in person and things like that for her. But I found that the national online cohort model was excellent. And, it is work. I won't I won't sugarcoat that at all. You know, it is like anything, it is something that you have to work hard towards. But it was completely manageable. I had two small children at the time. I was working full time, and I at no point did I find it overwhelming at all. And so I was really um, yeah, I was really thankful for the journey. It was fantastic. I highly recommend it.
Thanks, Erin. And let's hear from Jill.
So I'll just kind of go back to like a bit of my background and why it meant a lot for me to go and get my APR. So my background is actually television broadcasting. So I worked and went to school at NAIT in Edmonton, actually, and then worked in radio and television for a few years, and I just wasn't loving it. And I ended up getting a communications consultant job out in Cold Lake. So I've been working in communications, public relations for about 15 years, mostly in municipal government. And throughout that process, I also got a postgrad uh, certificate from Ryerson. I don't know what it's called now out in Toronto, but in public relations. And I felt like I was like, that was a great accomplishment, but like it just doesn't feel like enough to really like prove myself in this profession. So I work with Jill, obviously, and she had her APR, and then four others in our department also had it. So I just thought, like, just for, that validation sometimes that you need to like say, like, I've been in this world for a long time, and I just really feel like I want to prove it, not outwardly, but just to myself that I'm here and I've made it in this profession. So that's kind of why I went into it. And it was really scary for me because I didn't go to university to get a degree in comms. I didn't get to learn all that theory, so all that background in the profession. So I was going into it expecting to learn, and that was as someone who is a continuous student, like I love to keep going back. This was a great opportunity for me. Um, so that was kind of like the why I did it, and I really just it was for myself. It was proved to myself that I'm I've made it in this profession. My work sample was about a COVID policy within the organization. So this one I was super proud of because it was one of the opportunities where I actually influenced policy and change within the organization, and that's a change for 1,500 people. So I advised the city manager, and I was able to actually help her make a decision that impacted everybody. So it was just an opportunity to showcase what I had done and really actually build out that plan, because in COVID, as most of you experienced, it was go go go. Like if you have something that you need to communicate, you likely weren't doing like a gold level plan. You were getting it done. You were surviving. We were all in that survival mode throughout all of COVID. So this helped me like build it out more, really make sure that I had done the evaluation properly and make sure all my ducks were in a row when it came to the research. So that was the work sample that I used. And as much as I hate to go back to that time, I still am super proud of it and I'm happy with the results of it. And it just was a great experience from the work sample perspective. And I, of course, had my team to support me. I'm very fortunate that I have APRs at my fingertips, literally surrounding me. We have no walls in our office, so I literally could yell over to them if I ever had any questions. Um, Throughout the process, so after once the work sample was put in, um, getting ready for the exam, I took it very seriously. Like Erin said, like, don't kid yourself. You need to invest some time in it. I remember sitting, studying and going through notes, and I'm going to show off my binder because I'm a paper person. Erin was saying, like, I don't know how people did it in paper. I was like, that's me. Everybody's really like has different learning styles, but I was the kind of person that needed everything. Please say, Stephanie, that you're also a binder person, and we can talk tabs later. But but it really is, you're finding your, love it. It's about finding how your learning style. So for me, my daughter was in cheerleading every Saturday morning for 2 hours. So I sat in that lobby and I studied, I researched, and I had my laptop, I had all my notes. So it was great. And it was just cool to be able to actually learn about the theories and the principles that actually are the foundation of this profession that really brought it up to the level that it's at now, it's not just, people thinking you're like you're twisting it to make an organization look better. You're seriously a strategic mind. You're sitting at that table. You're influencing decisions that impact the business. So it was just cool to learn about all those theories. So whether you had the opportunity to do that in university, or if you're like me and this is kind of your secondary career, it's a great refresher. Like it validated a lot of the work that I already did. Those theories, I didn't know it, but I was actually already applying them without knowing the name of them. And then got through the exams. Then I'm going to tell you my story about actually receiving my accreditation in Whistler. Um, and this is not, by the way, to make CPRS look bad. This is actually like what it gives you as an APR, like that confidence, the ability to shift when things maybe get hard. Because when you're in public relations, you can plan for the worst of times or the best of times, but you're always going to have to navigate those difficult situations and have to make snap decisions based on your experiences, your education. So it gives you a different level of confidence in what you're doing. So went to the conference, really excited, like couldn't wait. And I'm not usually someone who likes to go on stage to accept something, but this was one that I was super proud of. And so we're sitting there. It was actually my boss and I that went to it. And I looked up on the screen and they had one slide of present APRs that year and one slide of not present APRs. And for some reason, my name landed on the not present APRs. And in that moment, I had a decision to make. I was like, I can sit here and cry because I'm upset that they forgot about me, even though I checked in, or I can make it a moment. So I went and I found the girl who is organizing it and just was like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm on the wrong slide. Like, I'm actually here. She's like, oh my God, she was horrified because like she's running a conference and then all of a sudden you forget someone. It probably doesn't feel great. I was like, it's okay. Just like, I really do want to accept it, whether you have the certificate for me here or not. She's like, okay, I'll make sure that at the end, they'll call your name. And I was like, okay. So at the end, they're like, oh, shoot. They called my name. I went up on stage, no certificate. So I looked around and I grabbed 3 cups and I handed one to Alex and I handed one to the other guy who was presenting. Can't remember. And I made them hold a glass up to me. And in that moment, I was like, this is what APR gives me. It gives me that confidence to be okay with like a difficult situation and you make a decision. You either act or you freeze. And in this public relations world, you need to act. You need to be the one that's confident and willing to go out there and stand in front. So I just think, if you're in this world, you already have that confidence, great. But APR, this process, it'll really help you with that even more. So anyway, I just think it's a cool process. I didn't talk about the cohorts at all. I'm a self-paced learner, I guess you could say. So I did join the national ones a few times, but I wasn't in a smaller one. And then just all the resources that gave me really helped me through the process as well.
Thanks, Jill. Did you want to add anything, Erin, for what Jill said?
I guess, so Jill, I liked how you kind of touched on how you came from a different background and didn't have that formal education. I was in the opposite role. I did have my PR diploma from Grant MacEwan at the time. It's now MacEwan. But what I found really interesting is I had been in the industry for about, I want to say 15 years, I think, when I took 15-ish years when I took the APR, and I still learned so much. Like it was just interesting, even though I graduated in 2007, it was interesting, and I was constantly doing professional development, but so much had changed in terms of even the theory and new best practices, and like even Barcelona principles. I think we're on like 3 point something now, or 4, maybe even 4. I don't even know anymore. But just even seeing how much things had progressed, even though I still thought I was fairly still newish in the industry, was really interesting, and it really helped apply a different lens to my daily work as well. So not only was I kind of using it to study and take my APR designation, but it was also changing how I approached the way I was doing certain things at work as well with my strategic planning. So it's a super beneficial process, whether, like you were mentioning, whether you have the background or whether you don't. It's really really fantastic to go through it.
To that point, in this role that I have now, in terms of supporting the APRs as they, or candidates as they work through that. And I mean, I took this in 2017, 18. I even found how much it was helping me in my practice, just supporting them in learning the theories. And I don't even remember, to the same point, what Barcelona principles we're on now. Because Jill and I were joking this afternoon that, we don't often sit with our clients and talk about the Barcelona principles. But for the most part, the work we're doing with our clients is foundational of those theories. It's just not necessarily that we're talking about them in those terms. And so I found it was really interesting to work with the candidates as they were working with that theory and layer on the experience at the same time. So it is a really interesting exercise to go through to sort of validate the work that you're already doing is still built on that theory, whether you come from that academic side or you're coming into the profession from a different avenue. And in the cohort that I just supported, we definitely had a mix of people who, I had somebody in the cohort who sort of came in through a veterinary world and landed in a communications role. And so really interesting career paths to come into the communications world. So the other piece I wanted to pick up on was something that Jill said around research and evaluation, in terms of thinking about your work sample. If you're thinking about coming into the APR this year or even next year, something really important to think about is, do you have a work sample, a communications plan that is really well structured in terms of the race formula right now? And you maybe you're thinking about doing your APR next year. Maybe this year isn't the right year for you, and that's totally fine. But it's really good to think about, what project have I done recently that has really strong research and evaluation? I think as communicators, we know that evaluation is one that we often don't have time for. We finish the project and we're on to the next project. So just something to think about as you're assessing if you're ready for your APR. Do you have a project that you could submit for your work sample that has a good demonstration of all of the steps of the race formula, but evaluation tends to be that one that we often fall down on because we just don't often have the time or the resources.
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, hi, Erin and Jill. Yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Deli. I just willing to apply for an APR. The experience is from Peru, and I went to that conference, but I don't remember that about a time about that project I will present. I don't remember. It was less than 5 years, or the experience the case you will present. I don't remember really.
For the work sample?
Yes, for the work sample.
Look, I think it's 2 years.
I was going to say, yeah, I think you have to have 5 years of experience, plus your work sample has to be completed within the last 2 years.
If you go, and at the I'll pop it into the chat, but on the website there is a a self-assessment tool that walks through a series of questions. That might be something to work through. And I'll also leave my CPRS email address here, and we could connect after for those specific questions.
Okay.
If that's helpful. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I see Anne.
Hi there. Thanks so much for hosting this evening. I'm a person who found myself in the communications field through a bit of a diverse path. I worked in loss prevention and logistics before I made the transition over here. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about how current APRs also help new applicants through that process.
I know, Anne, for when I went through it, I had a couple of APRs review my work sample that I put together and give me feedback. So I think I had, I want to say 3 or 4 people, and I actually didn't know all of them at the time. It was people that had kind of offered through the accreditation chair just to kind of help support if there was anybody that wanted that, and it was super helpful. So I did have about 4 people from the local chapter review my work sample and kind of give me some feedback and some pointers, and it was excellent. It really, where I had it compared to where it ended up when I submitted it were very, very different. And it was thanks to that help that helped support me along the way with that. So.
And so there is a lot of support through that local cohort model where the APRs in the Edmonton chapter would sort of work together in a study group setting as you work through the APR process. And so you would have support in that perspective. And then just generally reaching out to sort of building that network of other APRs that you're able to connect with. So I don't think support is necessarily a challenge if you don't know people. There's definitely ways to connect you in with other APRs. I see a couple of questions here on the chat. My last 2 years of experience have been with the government of Alberta, and my work is classified protected. How am I able to show some of my work samples in that case? That is a great question, and I know. I'm going to take a stab at this question. It might be a question that can also be elevated to, there's probably a national call similar to this one coming up with Alex, who is the national, I'm going to get his title wrong, but I think he's like the lead examiner for, it's Alex Sevigny, who we keep referring to as Alex. You can leave out, I believe, information that is sensitive. You also have a degree of confidentiality when you submit your work sample. There is an understanding that information that you submit in your work sample, as long as you identify it, it needs to be protected for whatever reason. So there are, I guess my short answer is there are ways to work around this situation. Did you want to add something, Jill?
I was just going to say, because mine was actually an internal policy, I did make sure that I was able to, mine wasn't shared outwardly, just with the people who were grading it. And there was just some information I left out. I removed a bit of the stuff that was specific to our organization and to the internal decision-making process. So there are ways around it too, but yeah, I definitely would check in with Alex in terms of if there's some that is very confidential and it's high risk. So
there may also be some further information about that in the handbook, which you will find on the APR CPRS website. Way too many acronyms. And then there is sort of an understanding that when you submit that work sample, the only other people who will see that work sample are the graders who will be grading that work sample. So it's not like it's then posted on the CPRS website or widely distributed. So there are some checks and balances in terms of who has access to that work sample. I don't think that that's a barrier to applying. I think there's workarounds for that situation.
Yes, I have a one.
Yeah, no. Go ahead.
Because I can't not remember when I talked to Alex in the conference. I think if we apply, we have to apply for one of the chapters, or is in general? Because I am now in Ontario, but in Thunder Bay, far away even for Toronto and Edmonton. Is something like that, or no? It's in general, because I think, unless we need some, help and connections.
So the reason you would need to apply, select where you are applying, is because on the exam, there are a section on the exam includes current affairs questions, and they are regionally based. And so if you are, it's going to be connected to which chapter you're associated with. So if you're in Ontario, when it comes to the oral exam, you're going to get a question based on Ontario. But if you're in Alberta, you're going to get that current affairs question based on Alberta. And then there's going to also be a national-based question. And so it's just important to understand that that oral exam has questions that are regional-based depending on what chapter you're connected with.
Okay.
Megan is asking, when is the national session? Sorry, my mic isn't working. I have not actually seen an ad or promotion for the national session for this year. I'm only making assumption that there is going to be one. Last year's, though, is recorded and available on the CPRS website right now if you want to watch last year's. Can you explain the 2 APR reference requirement? Do they have to know your work sample? That is a great question. I believe they only need to know you as a professional. I don't think they actually have to be familiar with your work sample.
Yeah, I think they just can attest to your work and your abilities. They don't have to necessarily know your work sample at all. And so you need three references, 2 of which need to be good standing members of CPRS.
Thank you, Jill. What is the difference between Calgary versus Edmonton chapter? So that's just simply a chapter based in Calgary and a chapter based in Edmonton. What did you say, Jill?
I was going to say geography.
Geography.
We're in Red Deer, so we can choose Edmonton or we can choose Calgary.
Yeah. So yeah, there's just different local societies, and there's one based in Calgary and one based in Edmonton. What advice would you give to someone just starting to think about applying?
I think it's a great idea to just kind of look into any information you can. So you already referenced, there is a ton of good information and past recordings on the CPRS National website. I really encourage you. I also reached out to a couple of local APRs that I found through LinkedIn and just asked if they would be open to a coffee chat, and they were. So I connected with a few people that way as well, just to learn a little bit more about their experience, and I highly recommend that. The other thing to think about is if you are seriously starting to consider it, really start thinking about your recent work or like the current work that you are working on and how you could put that into your format for a work sample. So like we spoke about earlier, that research and that evaluation, two things that are super important as part of the APR process, but might not be something that's always well thought out and included in strategic plans if you're trying to do all the things. So really starting to kind of think about your current work or past work that you just completed and how you could maybe go back and frame that and reference that. That would also be something that I would really think about and keep in mind.
Well, the biggest thing for me, again, was the connections to other APRs. So if you don't have anyone in your life right now, I love that you went through LinkedIn, found people, and just took that initiative and did it, or connect in with your chapter and finding that, because people who have been through the experience are your best resource. Whether it's going through your work sample or just having a conversation about it, running through exams, chatting theory, it's for me, that's one of the best ways to learn, is to actually speak to someone who has experienced it.
Something to add that we haven't really touched on, because I know we've talked a lot, and this is obviously a lot about talking about, how to prepare yourself and what to think about and what to expect. But just one of the things that I want to talk about once you have gone through that process and obtained the designation, one thing that I didn't really think about or keep in mind when I did it, I didn't think about all of the other opportunities that would present afterwards. I mean, I did in terms of my professional growth, but when you obtain your APR designation, you're also open to being able to take part in a lot of CPRS national activities. So for example, like I am part of the national PD committee that meets every month and kind of talks about some of the PD opportunities that we want to put forward to members going forward. I have marked the PRK, which is the kind of beginner knowledge testing that CPRS now offers. I've also taken part in the actual APR testing process as well. So for the marking and for the verbal portion of the APR exam. And I've found that really rewarding and fulfilling because you get to meet a lot of really, really brilliant people, and just hearing from others' experiences and also just their frame of reference and how they think about things is really mind opening, and just really makes you again think about like how you can be doing things differently. And I've also taken part in the last 2 years judging the awards of excellence, and to me, that has been one of the most rewarding parts of the entire process. Just seeing the brilliant work that so many communicators across the country put forward and have done, in a variety of different categories. It's something that I honestly truly look forward to doing every year because I just always learn so much. So the learning and the continuous growth that comes from getting the obtaining the designation, it just keeps kind of spiraling forward every single year. So it's just, I can't speak enough about how rewarding and fulfilling the entire process is.
I think that's a great point. We spent a lot of time sort of talking about, why, sort of getting into the process and what it takes to go through the process versus what some of those benefits and rewards are post achieving the APR. I also had the chance last year to mark the Awards of Excellence, and I really enjoyed, as someone who has worked exclusively in the public sector, a lot of the awards were private sector based, and it was really interesting to read about endless budgets that some of these private sector companies have, particularly those that use ad agencies. And so it was really interesting to read some of their wild campaigns that we could never get away with in the municipal government sector. So it does open some of those doors. To that point, Jill, what was sort of your takeaway as a post APR person? Because you have an additional designation too that you haven't talked about.
Yeah, I recently received my chartered marketer designation through the Canadian Marketing Association. So yeah, I went from APR, took about 6 months break, and then went for that one. That one was a 2-year process. So it's been pretty cool just, going through that process and learning, and but now being able to actually apply it and being able to help others. So I have a team of marketers that I have been able to kind of guide and share a lot of the learnings that I have been able to experience. So just like, going and grading or doing the testing through CPRS, but also being able to be there for your colleagues and being able to, not everybody gets the opportunity to do this or has the time in their lives to be able to do this type of accreditation. But being able to be a resource for them as well. It's been cool. Like you said, grading exams, being able to do like the sample oral exams this year was pretty cool. And yeah, just being able to help others through this process, it's exciting. And I hope that other people, when they, I can be that person for them, just like a lot of my colleagues have been for me. It's rewarding just in that.
How much does the exam cost? I want to say it's $795.
Yeah, I think it's around $800, and it's for the whole process. So it's like the process of your accreditation. So doing your work sample and all that and the exam. So, and then you have requirements to uphold your APR annually. So whether it's grading exams, judging awards of excellence, you're required to do a certain amount of things while also maintaining your membership with CPRS.
Here we go. Any final questions? Okay, then I will say thank you for attending, but please reach out to me if you have any other follow-up questions. Happy to help you with any of the application process or get you in touch with the right people who can support you if you have really specific questions. There are staff members at the national CPRS level that can help you with those really specific questions that we just probably don't have the answers for tonight. But they're, do this day in, day out, and they'd be able to help you with those specific questions.